Did you ever play or heard a pipe organ? Or a harpsichord, perhaps? That lovely little instrument that you played on the third grade, the recorder? Violin? Or maybe the trumpet? These instruments are invented during Baroque period. So, if you hear either of those instruments, it is probably from Baroque. The word Baroque is derived from the Portuguese word barroco, which means pearl of irregular shape, that was used in fine jewelry, and considered a pejorative when it was first used in the early 18th century. During the Baroque period, the arts highlighted grandiose and elaborate ornamentation, new instrumental techniques and changes in musical notation were developed. Major and minor tonality was also created in this period. Musicians and composers are very gifted, so compositions become more complicated, and a great diversity of compositional style emerge. Baroque music are not easy to remember because melodies are very continuing, or there is no stopping point, especially in instrumental music. And it's not easy to sing because it has a very disjunct notes, or the melodies has a very large leap. In music, counterpoint is the relationship between two musical lines, the gorgeous harmony on top, and supported by a beautiful melody. In contrapuntal music, there are so many things happening on the melody, you cannot distinguish the melody from the harmony. Contrast is an important ingredient in the drama of a Baroque composition. The differences between loud and soft. Solo and ensemble. And different instruments. All of these is to convey different parts of the musical piece, all play an important role in many Baroque compositions. Baroque music expanded the size, range, and complexity of instrumental performance, and also established musical genres, like opera. Opera is a form of theater in which music has a leading role, and the parts are taken by singers, but is distinct from musical theater. Cantata. Cantata is a religious or secular vocal piece composition, with an instrumental accompaniment, typically in several movements, often involving a choir. Toccatas. Toccatas is a musical piece intended primarily as a display of manual dexterity, often free in form, and almost always for a solo keyboard instrument. Concerto Grosso. Concerto Grosso is a form of orchestral music that employs a solo instrument accompanied by an orchestra. Oratorio. Oratorio is a large-scale musical composition for orchestra and voices that incorporates narratives on religious themes. Unlike usual theatrical works, this is usually performed without the use of costumes, scenery, or action. It is usually written in the native language for the intended audience. Fugue is a contrapuntal piece, developed mainly by imitative counterpoint. It is usually written in 3 or 4 parts, with a main theme called subject. The entire piece grows mainly from a single brief tune of strong musical character. The Baroque period produces many noteworthy composers. Composers like Johann Sebastian Bach, Antonio Vivaldi, and George Friedrich Handel. Johann Sebastian Bach was taught to play violin by his father, who was then the town musician in Eisenach. He entered school at age 7 where he was taught religion and other subjects. Bach's beautiful soprano singing voice helped him to be accepted at a school in Louisburg. A few years later, his voice changed and Bach focused his attention to playing the violin and harpsichord. His personal and deep faith is shown in his sacred music. He was known for his compositions for organ, orchestra, and oratorio. Johann Sebastian Bach works includes Antonio Lucio Vivaldi, nicknamed Il Prete Rosso, the Red Priest, because of his red hair, was an Italian Baroque composer, Catholic priest and a virtuoso violinist. Recognized as one of the greatest Baroque composers, his influence during his lifetime was widespread over Europe. Vivaldi is known mainly for composing instrumental concertos, especially for the violin, as well as sacred choral works and over 40 operas. He entered the priesthood and was ordained in 1703. Vivaldi is well known for giving the strings a major role in his compositions. His most famous piece is The Four Seasons. This composition is a series of 4 violin concerti depicting each of the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. George Handel was the second son from the second marriage of a pastor. Despite his father's opposition, George secretly taught himself to play the harpsichord. At age 7, he gained access to a church organ and started to play. A Duke heard him play and insisted on giving him a formal music education. Under Zachau, organist of Halle Cathedral, he studied counterpoint, canon and fugue. Handel is remembered for his operas and oratorios and became England's favorite composer. Handel lost both of his eyesight in 1753. When he conducted his oratorio, Samson, a few in the audience were unaware that he had lost his eyesight. The Messiah is Handel's most famous creation and the very well-known Hallelujah. Hallelujah was written in the space of 24 days in London, but it was in Dublin when Hallelujah was first performed and became an instant success. New instrumental techniques and changes in musical notation were developed in the Baroque period. The major and minor tonality was also created in this period. A lot of the musical terms and concepts that evolved in this era are still used today.